Hey YouTube. So it's a nice sunny day out, but I'm in the house because I'm drawing a truss that I want to make. So I'm just making a little sketch of it here so I can take the sketch out to the garage. But what I found about AutoCAD is you can really do some accurate measuring. For instance, if you look there, you can see that the board has to be 1 7/16. So what I do is I just measure that stuff and go over everything, all the pieces, and write the measurements down, and then I go ahead and start cutting that. Now the only critical thing here you got to be careful of is I'm using 2x4s that are full size, so they have to be full size, you know, at the on the top chord and this bottom chord here. If they're not, then you know that messes up the length of these pieces in between. Doesn't matter if these are 4 inches exactly wide. So, you know, when you plane them down, you want to be at 4 inches to get good measurements on the 16 footers. That's what these are. They're 16-foot trusses from here to right here. Okay, with a 10-inch overhang, 12 inches when you put the 2x4 on. So anyway, or 1 by whatever you want. Anyhow, I don't care what he puts on there, but what I'm concerned about is that the truss fits together nice and that they're all the same size. So I have these all the pieces marked on my paper and everything, and I'm considering going out there to start cutting them. It's a little cold out this morning. I think it's around 30 degrees or 31 degrees. It's not warm enough to thaw out, but so I don't know if I'm going to cut them for sure or not this morning. I don't want to have to take them in the garage, or I actually want them in the garage. But I just put my truck in the garage and I don't really want to take my truck out, so we'll see what I get done here. Just pick out some boards and get them over there. But anyway, that's what I'm working on this morning on a Saturday to lay out the day here. So I guess I better go pull some 2x4s off the pile. I checked them this morning. They were a hair over 19% moisture content, which is not bad for this type of work, so I'll see what happens here. So anyway, this is a truss for a neighbor of mine that has a camp up not far from me. He wants to build a little pavilion. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do here this morning is I'm taking some of the 1x off. It's actually a little after noon really. I'm going to take some of the 1x off, put it over there, because the 2x's are down to like 19% almost, very close, and I want to start seeing what I have. Probably cut the shorter pieces first out of those short 2x4s and then work down to the 16 footers. Okay guys, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to cut here. This is a 512 16 foot long rafter. I don't know if you can see it there too well, but it doesn't really matter. The pieces that I'm going to put in between the center, like at 4 foot off the edge of the 16 footer. In other words, the 16 foot is going to be one board, but I'm saying from here over 4 feet is roughly the center of this, and I'm going to just go straight up. I was going to go on an angle. I decided to go straight up. It's less of a hassle. So what we're doing here was we're cutting 512 cuts. So that means that all of the cuts except the 90s have something to do with a 512. So this cut here, if you put the outside of your framing square, you put a 5 right along the edge there, and a 12, let's see, yeah, 12 right along that edge where the end of the pencil line is. You get a nice 512 angle there. So I'm going to cut those, and according to my paper here, they are 1 foot 3 7/16 on the long side. So I'll cut one of these, and that'll be my pattern. And then I'm going to mark it as a pattern so I don't mess it up. So 1 foot 3 7/16. So we're measuring from the long point. 1 foot 3 7/16 would be right there. Now, since each truss takes 2 of these, I'm going to go ahead and cut. Let's see, we need 12 trusses, so I need 24 of these cut. So I'm going to put pat on here for pattern. I'm going to cut this right along the edge of the line there, and then I'm going to use this to mark all the other cuts that I make. So that'll give me what I'm looking for the brace between the rafter, I don't know if you can see this, I'm having a hard time seeing the camera myself, between the rafter and the ceiling joist. That'll give me that brace that I want in there. Okay, now for a 16-foot truss, you may not need this, but we had as much as 42 inches of snow here in 1 week, and I don't want to see this thing collapse, so that's why I'm going to go with that. And these are the white pine 2x4s that I cut not very long ago. Now the important thing here is it's not that it's perfectly 1.5 inches thick. What's important here is this width. You want the 4 inches. But although on these little supports it's not a big deal if they're an hour or whatever, as long as you got the right length you'll be okay. So I want to put this so that I'm not feeling any edge there. And then I'm going to mark this end. And cut right along the line. So that's going to be what I'm doing for these smaller supports here. The one thing here, guys, that's important is you use the same pattern to do the marking. So it doesn't matter if it's on the square end or this end. You want the back to be even, this top to be even, and then you go ahead and mark this back side, which I've already done. Okay, so then when I cut this now, when I cut this, what I need is to leave that line on there, just a hair of that line. Okay, so this is good. I need 24 of them. I have 2 pre-cut. So I'm just going to keep going with them. I'm throwing them in the wheelbarrow to make it easy for me to get them into the garage. So that's what I'm going to do first, is cut the short ones. Okay guys, so I have all them cut. They're in the wheelbarrow. There's 24 of them. That's the short supports. Now it's the support that's in the middle, and I'll show you that here. I don't know how good you can see that. Yeah, right here, this one. So that has 2 angles on it and then a straight bottom. And the length of that is 2 foot 9 3/8 from the point to the straight bottom. So that's pretty good. So I'm going to be cutting those next. Now the shorter 2x4s here are the ones I'm taking. Even though 3, 6, 9, let me see, I don't know how long they are exactly. I think they're only 8 footers, so that'll only give me 2. Yeah, they're 8.5 feet, so that's only going to give me, I think, 2 of those middle supports. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I need 2 more 2x4s here of the shorter ones. So 1 and 2. That'll give me all the 2x4s I need to make that center support. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Now, first I'm going to make a pattern just like I did before. And the pattern's the best way to go, so you have the same size all the time. So I'm looking here to see, it's right on 4 inches. So what we need here is a 5 on this side and a 12 on this side. Okay? 5 and 12, and we're going to mark that, and then we're going to put a 5 and 12 on this side. Well, first let me mark 2 inches in here. I'm going to go 2 inches. That'll put me right in the center of this. And then I'm going to put a 5 and 12 over here on this side. Now you want to be careful if you have, if the board has a bend in it or a bump or a knob or whatever, you know, you're liable to throw this angle off, but it's not that bad of a deal if you're off slightly. I mean, it's nice when you can have all of the boards touching one another and everything, but the point of the matter is there's braces in between there that's going to hold everything. So anyway, that's the mark on there. You can see it here. So it's 2 cuts. It's going to be this cut and that cut, and then I got to cut it to length. So I'm going to cut the point first, and then I'll cut it to the length. Okay, that's the point that goes between the 2 rafters, or actually supports the 2 rafters. And what did I say? 2 foot 9 and 3/8. 2 foot 9 and 3/8. So 2 foot 9 and 3/8. Like I said, when you're looking at your 2x4, you kind of want to pick the straight side. Because I just took them off the rack there, they're really not bent anywhere too badly at all. You can barely see it. But so now that mark that I just put on there, right here, this is a straight mark. That'll give me the support for the center of the truss, and then that'll also be a pattern. So I'm going to write pad on this, and then we'll all cut them all the same. One thing about making patterns all the same, making the boards all the same, is if there's a mistake in the cut, you could change the 4.5 to 12. It don't have to be a perfect 5/12. There's no reason for it, but I think that would be better than a 4/12. So you could cut it down a little, change it if you have to, and make some adjustments. But the best thing to do is to draw it, make sure it's accurate, and then go ahead and cut. And that's what I'm doing. Okay, so this is the pattern for the center of the truss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the straight edge here. I'll save that cut. Make sure we're even. You don't want to feel anything except for maybe the fuzz when you go across there. Make sure you're even on the edges, and then just put your marks. Now it's nice if you can have the point perfectly in the center of the board. Again, this doesn't matter because you can always put it a little bit to one side, this way or that way. It's not going to hurt anything. Nobody's going to see it. It's not going to make the board any less good. So, you know, this is pretty much what it is. I could have got some of these smaller ones out of this, but I didn't. So we'll use them for something else, maybe firewood. I'm just going to check that against the pattern. It's not bad. This board's slightly more than 4 inches, but it's still good. Alright, so I need 12 of those. So 10 more now with what I have here. Alright, so I'm going to mark those using the pattern, just like I showed you there. I'm going to use the pattern to mark these, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut them off. So you don't need to watch me do all the repetition, but I'm just saying that's what I'm going to do. Okay guys, so that's 12 of the center points that go on the truss. So we've got all the support pieces cut. Now we can cut the actual truss itself. Okay, so that gets 2 angles, 2 5/12 angles put on it, and then the 16 footers, what they do is they get a the 12 side of the 12/5 pitch put on that on each end, so they're exactly 16 foot long to the point. I'll show you that after I get to it. So let me cut the rafters now. We need 24 of them. Okay guys, so we're going to cut these rafters now. So what I want to show you is I've already cut a 5/12 angle on that end. And from the point on the top there, I measured down 9'5" 3/4, and then I put the 5 on one side of the square on that, and the 12 on this side of the board. So the 5's right at the 5-inch mark over here, and the 12-inch mark over here. Now you want to make sure you're right with that, so you get these to fit good. And that'll be what I want in full length. So I can just make this cut off here, and that'll be the rafter, one rafter, 9'5" 3/4. Let me check that measurement here. 9'5" 3/4. So that's good. Alright, so let me just tell you something about these rafters here now. When you go to pick out the boards for the rafters, what you want to do is try and get the boards leaning all the same way. 2x4s are bent no matter who cuts them and who stacks them. They always have a little bit of a bend to them. This one here, this is the high side. In other words, it's bent like this, but very little. You can barely see it, but it's there. So what I do is I just put a little mark there pointing up to show which side is up. Okay, that's my mark right there, and that makes sure that I cut them the right way. Now the best way to do that is not to do them one at a time, because you might forget them. The best thing to do is to get a pile of 2x4s on your bench like I have here, and look down them and mark them with the high point facing away from you. Yeah, so this goes this way. This one goes this way. So that's what you want to do. Mark a bunch of them so that you don't forget and end up cutting them with the wrong bend on them. Now there's a reason for this. First of all, whichever way is bent up, when you put weight on the roof, it'll flatten out a little bit. That's one thing. The other thing is the stress is towards the top of the roof, you know, the surface of the roof. So you're helping push on the stronger part of the board. The other thing besides that then is that when you go to put the trusses together, if you have one board, like say on one truss, let's say you have 2 boards down, the peak of the truss is going to want to be higher than it would be, and it's separated, than it would be normally. So that's one thing. The other thing is that they're not going to be the same triangle as one that had, you know, the bend on the top. So the best thing to do is put the bend on the top so you get the straightest truss that you can get out of it. Oh, that's a straight one. Alright, so we'll go like that. So when the boards are straight, and occasionally you get a good straight one, it doesn't matter which way you mark it. So just mark it so that you're going. So what I have there now is I have all these boards marked that direction. So this first one here, I'm going to write pad on this for pattern. Okay, so that's my pattern, and I can just go ahead and pull a 2x4 over here and start marking these. So one way to mark these, you can take a small piece of wood and you can nail it on the edge of this and down at the edge of that, because the ends are where you want this thing to be right. So right now I'm pretty close there, but this end has to come in a little bit for the pattern, and when I move this in, sometimes that moves out. Now it didn't look like it did, but I don't mind walking back and forth here. It ain't gonna hurt anything. It helped keep me warm. But okay, so I'm gonna mark that, and without moving it anywhere, just squeezing it, I'm gonna mark this end. Okay, so that's how you mark off the trusses and get ready to cut them. So that's the mark here, and I'll cut that. And that's a 512 with the 5 going along the line here, going along this line. And I'll show you where the 12 goes on the bottom. Looks like we're a little thick there. Ugh. Okay, so we cut that in, and now I'm going to cut this end, and that'll be another rafter. So I need 24 of these. Now you want to make sure when you're cutting rafters that the plate of the saw is laying down nice and flat, okay? I mean, you can pick it up this way, but you don't want to get it to be sideways on those cuts. You want them to be flat. And like I say, if you want to make this a little easier for one person, you just take a piece of wood, something similar to a piece of 1x like this, say about 8 inches long, cut it off, just put a nail in here and drive that in, and then you'll use that to, on the pattern rather, you put it on the pattern, and then you'll set that on every one to make cuts. Now like I say, these boards aren't bad because they are in the process of drying, so I'm okay with what I have here. Alright, so I'm going to move these onto the truck rather than the wheelbarrow. And I'll take these over to the garage after I finish cutting them. So what I do is, if you look up there and you see this edge even, you want to make that edge sort of even, and then just check them so that they're even there, and then check the other one before you mark it. Yeah. And don't forget what I said about using the pattern to make them. If you don't use the pattern to do your marking, what happens is as you cut, you'll end up with the board slightly getting bigger. If they're a 1/16 bigger and you're cutting a whole house full of rafters, you could end up with all kinds of mistakes. So you don't want that. You want the roof to be nice and square so everything fits good on it. Now as far as the length of these rafters go, I'm putting them at 10 inches, and that gives me almost a 1 foot overhang there's no definite thing here. I haven't decided or said it's exactly a 1 foot overhang or whatever, and this is close enough. 10 inches is fine. If I wanted an exact 1 foot overhang, then what I would do is I would cut these things so that they hang over the 16 foot board, probably 11 1/4 inches, and then a 3/4 inch face board. Or you can use a 2 inch face board. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. Some people don't like a 1 by. I like a 1 by on small things like this. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so now we have 2 of them done. Now for something like this, you can go ahead and, if the guy who's helping you or whatever, if you have a helper, he can go ahead and take the pattern and mark a bunch of these, just so that he's careful with what he's doing. Because if you mark one here and you're off down there, when you go to move that down there, you automatically pull this off. So you don't want that. You want them to be even. So as long as the helper knows what he's doing with that, then you can have the helper do it. Just so you know, cutting these 5/12 and all is all a part of geometry. And the more you understand geometry, the more you can figure stuff out. Like, I can figure out the length, the angle, and all that stuff with math for these, or I can do it with a framing square. And I like doing it with a framing square. It's easy. There's no thinking to it. Just 5/12 and know your length, and that's all there is to it. So it's not hard. It all depends on what you want for the length. Like I say, you can have any length you want. If you cut them, like let's say for some reason you cut one short, you can cut them all short if you have to. I mean, if you're an inch short, it's not going to matter. Now, because this is a 10-inch overhang, if you're 10 inches short, you're going to have a problem. You won't have any overhang at all. Of course, you could fix that with a scab or something, but I wouldn't do that. But I'm just saying, or maybe I would if I spent a lot of money on 2x. If they're 2x12s, I certainly would. But anyway, what I'm saying is you can cut them to any length you want as long as they're hanging over or flush, whatever you want them to be at the wall. Now, if these were regular rafters, what we would be cutting out of this is a bird's mouth, they call it, down where the rafter sits on the wall. But because it's a truss, we're not. Because what's going to happen here is the truss is going to be cut on such an angle. The truss is cut on such an angle that the truss takes up the weight of the rafter there, and the truss lays flat on the wall. So we don't need to cut bird's mouth out of these. But if it was a regular rafter, we'd have to. But we don't, so we don't have to do that. It's not hard to cut a bird's mouth or anything. It's just that sometimes we're a little bit of pesty, because on a 2x4 you can't overcut. You have to be at the exact, you got to end where the pencil line is, and then use something else to finish that up. Which is, sometimes I use a hand saw. You can use a cutoff saw or whatever, it doesn't matter. Now when you go to cut the template out, the other thing that's nice is if you cut the template out of a straight board. In other words, try and pick the one that does not have any bend to it, you know, like a high side. Try and pick a nice straight one, and that'll give you nice straight rafters then as well. So this piece I have here, it's not the perfectly straight. It has a little bit of a bend to it, but it's not enough to make me worry about it. Now when you're cutting these, I try to leave half the line on, so I'm cutting right down the line. In reality, you can cut the whole line off as long as you can see that you're at the line. The reason I don't like to cut the whole line off is because if I do, then I can't tell where the line is at all because I cut it off. So I like leaving a little bit of the line on there. 5. Now when you're putting these together, if you have some bowed boards, you're going to have to realize then that the bottom of the cut may be slightly away from the other board. But we're putting a metal plate in here, so it's not going to hurt anything. But the closer they are to a nice fit, the better off your wood is. That's the best way to do it. But because there's a metal plate in there holding everything, it pretty much, you know, I mean, if you're off a 1/16 of an inch, it's not going to hurt anything. If you're open a 1/4 of an inch on the bottom, it really wouldn't hurt anything if you're having a metal plate there. But if you're off more than that, you're off too much, and you've got to rethink your cutting. Okay, 6, 12, 18, 24. I need 3 more sets like that. So I got to get some 2x4s over here. And that's how you cut the rafter. Okay guys, you can see I've got 24 rafters that are cut now. And it's 4 o'clock already. But I want to get these other 16 footers cut. I only need 12 of them. And the reason for that is it's supposed to snow tomorrow, so I want to get this horses put back, the wood cleaned up, so I can back my pickup truck back up here where I can use it to plow. So, 12 more boards to cut, and that'll be it. I'll show you how I mark them then. Okay guys, I've got all the 16 footers up there I need, and I'll show you how to mark this for the bottom, or for the ceiling joist. Now, what you want on this one is you want this 12-inch cut. So we're going to put 5 and 12 exactly on the top of the line there of the board. going to move it down here so I don't have any waste, just in case I'm close at the other end. Right about there. So I'm looking at the 12 is right on the line there. The 5 is on this line, and we're going to give ourselves a mark. Okay, so that's the angle of the board for the rafter that goes up there. Will be like this. Okay, the rafter lays on top of that. So I'm going to cut that there, and then I'll hook the tape onto the cut and measure down 16 feet, because that's how big these are, and then we'll have a template to use. Okay, I'm going to hook on here, measure down 16 feet, and make another mark on this, and that's exactly where these 16 footers will be. Okay, so I've marked here and I've marked down at the other end, so I'm going to cut that down there, and then that'll be the end of all the truss parts. So I'll be using that as a pattern, and I'll pattern every one of them, mark them off, and then the trusses will be done being cut. All I got to do then is put them together. So for now, that'll be the end of this. My battery's gone dead, so everything should be fine. And it's getting late already, 4 o'clock, quarter after. Oh no, wait a second, this is wrong. So let's see, fall back. I don't know if it's 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock. No, it must be 3 o'clock. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to cut this and then it'll be in good shape. And that'll be the end of my work for today. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, excuse me, don't be afraid to ask. Bye.